Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share some Christmas seal collecting interests with you. I had a presentation that I made before that had Red Cross seals, and those seals went from 1907 to 1919. And 1919 was a significant date because it was the last time that a Red Cross was used on a Christmas seal, and the first time the double-barred Cross of Lorraine, which is the symbol of the Lung Association, was used on the seal. After that, Christmas seals, as we know them, came into existence beginning in 1920. Now, what makes this presentation, I think, somewhat interesting is that the seals that followed the Red Cross seals are very, very inexpensive. As a matter of fact, you could probably say they're dirt cheap. So what is there to collect? And that's what this is about. This is about things that have spun out of Christmas seal collecting from 1920 on. And these are interests that are very engrossing and so in some cases very challenging. Go ahead, Paul. So what is there to collect after 1919? Well, the seals themselves, as I just indicated, are really dirt cheap, and it's pretty easy to assemble a collection of face types. So what is collecting, what is collectible, and what makes some of this more interesting and more difficult? Well, for one thing, event covers that have seals on them are very collectible. And here are two event covers that I've found over the years. These both refer to the Wright brothers, and the Wright brothers flight at Kitty Hawk in 1903 was commemorated with a pair of commemorative stamps in 1928. Here are two covers that have 1928 seals tied to them, and that represents legitimate usage. There's no way to assert legitimate usage of a seal unless it's tied. And I'm going to be showing you some interesting ways to tie a seal. But these two covers are in my collection, and I'm really proud to have found them. Go ahead, Paul. Here's an event cover, which is really pretty difficult to find. It's a 1935 seal tied to a ship launching cover. That's the only 1935 seal I have ever found tied. And I found it probably 50 years ago. And I can remember where I found it. It was in Cincinnati at a stamp show. And I was living in Lexington, Kentucky, and that was the closest place that had a stamp show. So I went there, and I discovered this cover, and I've had it ever since. It's a really great example of a ship launching cover. Go ahead, Paul. Now, this is a remarkable cover. This is a World War II commemorative cover that has the seals from 1941, 1942, 1943, and 1944 tied to it with a cachet. Those were the war years, World War II years, up till the time that the cover was made. And it's a very collectible cover. Go ahead, Paul. I think that as you're rummaging around and looking at things, you'll rarely find anything as remarkable as this. This is a cover that was mailed. It's a Christmas card. It was mailed from Berkeley, California in December 1934. They tried to deliver it. It was mailed to Cape Town, South Africa. They tried to deliver it, but the person who was expected to receive it had left, gone back to England, and left a Middlesex, England address. So it was forwarded to England. They tried to deliver the cover. It couldn't be delivered. They couldn't find the person. They sent it back to London. On the back of the cover is a 1934 Christmas seal. What tied the seal is a stamp that was returned to sender. And you can, if you look at it, you can see the return to sender stamp actually tied the seal. It's a very unusual usage. The great or prominent philatelic correspondent, John Hotchner, collects 1934 seals. And I sold this to him. He was very interested in it, made me a good offer for it, and I sold it to him. It now resides in his collection. Event covers like this. Here's a railroad event cover, which has got a 1945 Christmas seal on it. Those are very collectible. And their collectability far exceeds the value of the Christmas seal. It's the fact that it's been used and tied. That's what makes this a valuable asset. It changes everything. And the cover above it is what's called a booth envelope, where they deliver the seals. Somebody used it, put 1945 seals on it, and those have been tied to the cover. Go ahead, Paul. Here's just some 1945 advertising items. One of them was an advertising item, and they decided to put it on the front of the cover. And it advertises 1945 seals. That's a very collectible item. Go ahead, Paul. What makes some of this very challenging is that the postal regulations forbid the use of seals on the mailing side of the card or cover. And if it was a Christmas card, what the Postal Service told you to do is put the seal on the front. In other words, put it on the design side and just paste the seal there. Well, nobody really liked that, but they enforced the regulations and they didn't want anything to be on the front. And so what people did is they put the seal on the back. Well, most of the time when you put the seal on the back, it didn't get tied because they didn't cancel the back. They only canceled the mailing side. Well, here's a cover with a 1931 seal on the back, mailed to Germany, and it is tied with a Wittenberg received cancel. So that's an unusual item. So sometimes that happens, and I'll show you another instance of that. Go ahead, Paul. I collected Emily Bissell first day covers. They were issued on, or they were canceled on May 31st, 1980. I have 14 of these covers. For these 14, I picked the best 3 of the 14. This is probably the best one. The person who made this cover up took both the first and the second seal, put them on the cover, and canceled them with a first day of issue cancel. So that's a very attractive, very collectible cover. Go ahead, Paul. This one is really a remarkable cover. What's going on here is the cachet maker made up a cachet honoring Emily Bissell and put the 1928 seal in the cachet. And then the person who made up the cover put a 1928 seal next to Emily Bissell's stamp and had it canceled on the first day. So that's a really nice pair. I was really pretty happy when I found that.
Stanley, is there any reason for the 1928 cover? Is there that date coincide with Emily Bissell or anything, you know?
No, I don't think that coincides with Emily Bissell.
Okay.
The reason that the earlier ones that were 1928 is that was the 25th anniversary of the Wright brothers flight. So
Okay.
those seals were put on there at the time that the covers were canceled. I think both of those covers were collectible. One was a first day cover and the other one was mailed from Kitty Hawk. I don't think there's anything special here. Maybe the cachet maker just liked the design of the seal and just put it in there. But whoever made the cover up took the 1928 seal, put it next to her stamp, and then had it canceled. Go ahead, Paul. Here is a cover that somebody put a bunch of things on. He put 3 Christmas seals. These are 3 national Christmas seals. And then he put 3 local seals. You see the others are local seals over here. 5 of these items got canceled. So that's a very interesting cover. But what makes the cover, I think, even more interesting is the cachet. If you come over and you look at the cachet, designed with Emily Bissell, the cachet designer put the first Christmas seal under this seal. In the bottom left-hand corner, I put the first and the second seal. That seal that he said was the first Christmas seal is actually the second Christmas seal. It's the Christmas seal that was designed by Emily Bissell to extend the sale. After they were successful in 1907 with the first Christmas seal, the one on the left, they decided that they could extend the sale, make some more money, and they put Happy New Year under it. Well, this is the second seal. It's not the first one. Go ahead, Paul. There are first day covers. And these first day covers don't refer to, what they refer to is they refer to the official launch date of the seal campaign. Now, that doesn't mean that's the first time the seal is going to be used. I'm going to show you several examples of that. The release of the seals is in the hands of the local committees. So they can release them anytime they want. And I'm going to show you some startling examples of their release dates. But in any event, this is the oldest of the first day covers that I have. It's 1937, and it's canceled in Santa Claus, Indiana, which is a Christmas-related city. And that's what they like to do. You'll see cancellations. Collectors of seals really want these. They're seals that have been canceled and used in Christmas cities: Christmas, Florida; Bethlehem, Pennsylvania; Silver Bell, Arizona; Santa Claus, Indiana. I don't know how many. There's a whole pile of Christmas-related cities, and these covers get used there. But in any event, the official launch date, which is November 25th, 1937, this is the oldest one I have. I think some of them go back into the earlier 30s, but I've never found any of them. Go ahead, Paul.
This is a quick question. So to prepare a cover like this, which is the official date, November 25th in this case, the person would have to have this in advance. They'd have to make that advance, but then they'd have to get this also ahead of time before this date. And that would account for maybe why some of these had even earlier release dates. It
could be, but the official launch date is going to be notified far in advance.
Mm-hmm.
They would know when the cancellation was going to be a first day cancel in Santa Claus, Indiana. Well, far enough in advance to be able to make up a cachet like that.
Yeah,
for the cover.
A lot more wiggle room than with the postage stamps.
Oh yeah. This is this will be a fairly well-established and advertised date, and people are going to go there and create. This is a created collectible. There's no doubt about that. This was created to be collected. It might have been mailed back to somebody, but the cover was created to be collected. This is interesting. I didn't know about this until Greg Ajamian told me about this. This is the first Christmas stamp. And there was an article by John Hotchner about the first Christmas stamp and the controversy surrounding the first Christmas stamp. Well, this is a first day cover, first day of issue of the Christmas stamp. And you can see it's November the 1st. And what is the Santa Claus, Indiana date? November the 13th. So this one was the Christmas stamp was released. Somebody used Christmas seals on the first day of issue for the stamp. And that's one example of an earlier usage. Go ahead, Paul. Here's another one.
There's a lot of background noise right now. Somebody's mic is.
I couldn't hear that one.
Yeah, if you could all turn your mics off, please. There's a lot of background noise. Sound like a washer dryer.
Okay, well, this is the Santa Claus, Indiana, first day cover, 15th of November, 1963. Here is the Christmas stamp. Canceled earlier, that's a release of a Christmas stamp in 1963, also canceled in Santa Claus, Indiana, but it's first day of issue of the stamp, and the seal is also canceled and used on that date. Go ahead, Paul. Another one, first day of issue of the stamp. It's November the 1st, both of these with the seals canceled. So that's clearly earlier usage.
Stan, when did they change the regulation that you could have your Christmas seal on the same side as the stamp? Do you know?
I'm not exactly sure. It was sometime toward the mid-30s.
Okay.
And what makes it very difficult to find seals used on the mailing side of a card or a cover in the late 20s and early 30s is they became really rigid about not accepting anything that had a seal on it, because they were saying the clerks were confusing this and passing it as postage, which is I'm going to show you something else later about that. That was sometime in the mid-30s is when they relaxed the regulations.
Okay.
There was some argument, and I think it had to do with the first day covers from Santa Claus, Indiana, that are earlier than the one I showed you, where collectors wanted to put the seals on the front, and the postal clerks were resisting this because it was a violation of the postal code. And the question arose, well, suppose I put the seal on the front, you cancel it, and you just hand the cover to me, and it's not processed. Is that a violation of the postal regulations? If you simply hand it to me, don't process it. So that went on, and there was that discussion, and some of them leaked through. So that's how the earlier ones got there, is that argument was made.
Gotcha.
Go ahead. Here is a 1964 first day of issue or first day cover, official kickoff for 1964, and it's got two seals tied to it. And then I have all of these from 1964, including this is an interesting one. He not only canceled the stamp 1964, and put a 1962 stamp on it as well. I guess that's you got to be thorough. But November 16th is the official launch date for the campaign. Go ahead, Paul. Now, this is a very remarkable cover. This is the earliest known usage of a Christmas seal in 1968. This cover over here is the earliest known usage. And that cover was canceled on Halloween. And it was canceled in Medford, Oregon. I wrote an article that I gave to the Seal News, and it was published in the Seal News. It was also published in the Christmas Stamp Collectors Society, the Yule Log. And one of the subjects was this cover, which was the earliest known usage. When I first published the article, I got a letter back from the Christmas Seal and Charity Stamp Society saying, we think this is a collectible. This probably doesn't represent earliest known usage. Well, I later found, and actually Bob Roof contacted me and said, I think they've accepted your cover because now it is listed as the earliest known usage of the 1968 Christmas seal. And that's the cover. And it's a commemorative cover for a pear festival. Go ahead, Paul. What they did later, I think that, you know, with Christmas seals becoming so common and their usage being difficult in the early years, what they did is they tried to do something a little different. So what they did is, instead of printing a sheet of 100 with 100 seals the same, they put these slogan seals in the corners. This is the earliest one sheet I could find. There may be others, but this is the earliest one I could find that had slogan seals on it. That makes a very interesting collectible, and I'm going to show you one of the collectibles. Go ahead, Paul. This
sheet of 100 has four slogans. Was every sheet of this issue? Did they have?
Yeah, I think every sheet did have that.
They weren't like a surprise, you know, for the lucky winner.
No, they were. This is the way they printed
Every
sheet.
Okay.
They printed this with the four corners having the slogans, and this is the earliest that I could find where they had done that. Go ahead, Paul. This is basically the way people collect this. They don't collect the sheets. I don't like collecting the sheets. It's kind of a pain to have them. You got to protect the gum and all that sort of thing. Mostly what people do is this: they'll take the four corner blocks and collect the four corner blocks. And here are the four corner blocks with the slogan seals on them for 1935. 1938, they did the same thing. In 1938, they had four slogan seals. And this is, again, the same effort to dress up the sheet. Go ahead, Paul. This is interesting because they reverted back to the four corners. Here are the four corner blocks for 38. And on the next slide, you'll see what they did in 37. Sorry, this is a souvenir sheet. That's the only time I've seen them issue a souvenir sheet, and they put all four slogan seals on it. Well, you know what's really interesting about the souvenir sheet is the slogan seals are at the corners, so they're all straight edges. And what they've got on the souvenir sheet is they've got fully perforated slogan seals. Well, they didn't appear that way. They appeared on the corners, so they've got two imperforate sides to them. And I found that kind of interesting. You can see them. The slogan seals are going to have imperforate sides, two imperforate sides. And, you know, the souvenir sheet doesn't have that. It's got the slogan seals with fully perforated sides. That's just another curiosity. This is a remarkable cover because somebody made this up. I know this is a booth envelope. I remember finding this in Colorado when the Air Force sent me out to Colorado. This has a slogan seal. It has the seal itself, and it's canceled on Christmas Day, which will be something I'll talk about in a few minutes. Then in 1937, instead of having the seals on the four corners, and this precedes that 1938 sheet that I showed you, they took 4 slogan seals and they put them in the interior of the sheet. Well, most people who don't want to collect the sheet like me are going to do this with it. If you look at the next one, they're going to take the blocks of 9 out with the slogan seal in the center and just keep these blocks. Now, these 4 blocks obviously came from different sheets. The use of multiple printers has made distinctive differences. This particular issue in 1937 is notorious for having variations in the color background. And you can see that there are variations in that. Go ahead, Paul. Here, it's more dramatic. I found some blocks that had even more dramatic color variations in the background of the seal. And you can see the distinction there. Go ahead, Paul. And then here is really interesting. This is a progressive color proof set for 1937 that shows the stages of the printing process. And that's very collectible. And seal collectors are very interested in that. But then you look at the variations in the seal. That's the one at the end is supposed to be what it is, supposed to be the final color. Look at the one underneath. Completely different. There's one over here. It's a different shade. And here's an imperforate proof pair. And I think that agrees pretty much with what's in the progressive color proof set. But there are a lot of variations in color. And some people really are interested in those variations and they extensively collect that.
Question, Stanley. With the stamp shown up here, the progressive, I guess my lack of knowledge is showing, but how many strikes did they actually make? Three or four colors?
Oh, I don't know. It varies. The number of different variations in the proof set, I'm not sure. It's different. You know, I'm going to show you some other. I'm going to show you some others, and there are a few of them. There are 7 stages here, but to reach the final, well, I guess 6, and then the final.
Yeah.
But it varies. You're going to see different numbers, and I've got some other proof sets I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Here is the 1939 seals, and they moved the slogan seals into the center. And how do you collect that? If you go to the next one, I think evidently you would guess you would take the 4 slogan seals out, surround it here, and have a block of 16 that has the 4 slogan seals in the center. That's generally how that issue is collected now, to get, gain the 4 slogan seals and have them in some symmetrical way. Okay, Paul. And then in 1940, and I don't know, they moved them around. Now they moved them, and they moved the slogan seals up into the upper left. I'm not sure what the logic behind any of this is. First, they started with the slogan seals in the 4 corners. Then they moved the slogan seals to the center. And now they move the slogan seals and they put them up in the upper left. And so how do you collect that? If you look at that, you would take the 4 slogan seals out, make a block of 20 and collect them that way. And so I've seen this quite a few times. This is the way to collect 1940. There is another interesting aspect of this. The use of multiple printers made the printer want to somewhere certify that it was his product. So what they did is they would put a printer's mark. And this is a printer's mark on the 1941 seal. So they put that printer's mark there. That means that there is one seal out of a sheet of 100 that's different than the other 99. Now, if you had a postage stamp and you had a sheet of 100 postage stamps and one of them was different, for some reason there was a different printing on one stamp, what would that be worth? Well, you might think 100 times. No, it doesn't work that way at all. But finding all the different printings and the different printer marks, these are letters. I have found 7 letters that have been used. For example, if you go to the next one, you see the 1941 seal, again, with a different printer's mark. There it is, S. I have found 7 different printers that were employed to print Christmas seals and use a mark, a printer's mark on the sheets. There are 7 that I could find. And then there are secret marks, and I haven't looked for any of those. Usually you find the printer's mark, it's in the catalog, it'll tell you where it is. It's usually found on seal 55 or 56 is where you find it, mostly 56. But these are very collectible, and there are some people who collect seals that just have the printer's mark on them. And that's a very difficult and challenging enterprise, because you really have to get the whole sheet in order to recover the seal that's got the printer's mark on it. And I have a number of these sheets, and I'm not going to break them up for the printer's mark. Here's a printer's mark too. This is printer's mark D. And they're hard to find. The printer's mark D is actually in the middle seal in this block of 9. We blew it up to show you where the printer's mark was. But if you're looking at the sheet and you're even just looking at that block and you don't know it's there, it's pretty easy to overlook. But that is a printer's mark D from the 1943 sheet. Go ahead, Paul. Here's the 1944 block. The printer's mark is the center one. I blew it up. It's S. Then the printer's marks that I have found, the initials that I have found, are from E, S, D, U, F, W, and R. These are all printers who were employed by the Christmas seal or the Tuberculosis Association to print the seals. And they put their own tag on it on one seal.
Is it possible to tie this back to a particular printer?
Yeah, those are. E is Eureka Specialty Printing Company. S is Strobridge Lithographing Company. D is Edwards and Deutsch Lithographing Company. U is the United States Printing Company. F is Fleming Potter Company. W is Western Lithography Company, and R is Bradford Robinson Printing Company. I knew somebody was going to ask me that, so I got this list together for that.
Is this an exhaustive list, or are there others?
I think this is all I could find. Now, I may have missed some. These are the ones that I have found. I have found 7. And I have not, there are secret marks where they decided that they wouldn't put a letter in there, but they would put a secret mark of some kind, light change in design. And for example, in the 1934 seal, I think what they did is they took one seal and they put more stars on it in the background. So they would take this, modify the design slightly, and that way they would be able to identify their own product. Now, just like postage stamps, there are printing errors. Here's a pretty dramatic printing error. This is 1941. The one on the upper left is what it's supposed to look like. The one on the right is a double printing error, a shift in the color. You can see where what it's supposed to be is that dark shade is supposed to be on the lighthouse. It got moved all the way over there to the right and create this mess. Here's a block of 15 of them that I found, and all of them have that color shift on them. So that's just like postage stamps, there are printing errors as well. Go ahead, Paul. This is a really dramatic printing error. The seal at the top, 1942, is what it is supposed to look like. And then look at the horse is drawing the sleigh. Look at where the horse ended up. It ended up in the margin. And then on top of it all, it's misperfed. You can see the perforations going right through the center of the seal. So that's an error. These are legitimate errors. They're very collectible. They're going to take a cheap seal and make that seal much scarcer and more collectible. But you have to be careful with them. This is a legitimate, you have to be careful, and I'll show you in a minute what can confuse a collector. Go ahead. This is probably my most astonishing error. This is a 1951 seal. That's the face of Santa Claus with his glasses. Look at where the glasses ended up. Looks like he has 4 eyes. That's a distinct shift in the printing process, and it completely messed up the design. I put one of these in the auction, a Christmas seal and Charity Stamp Society auction. Nobody liked it, and it didn't sell. So it is an error, though. There's no question about it. You have to be careful with them, because what you might think is an error might be a seal that somehow got removed from a color proof set. You know, if you were looking at one of these and not realizing that this was a color proof set, you might think you discovered a color error. But what you got is you got something instead that was just separated from the color proof set. So you have to be careful when you're looking for errors. The ones I've shown you are definite printing errors. Go ahead, Paul. Here's progressive color proof set. It has 7 stages in it. These two were coupled together in 1964, and these are the color proofs for those, or the color proof sets for those 2 seals. Okay, Paul. Oh, that's the end of that part. We had to break this up into 2 parts because the file size was so immense. So we have 2 parts to this. Okay, this is the second part. And these two parts, there was no particular reason for separating the way they were. It's just that it made the file sizes roughly the same. So we have part two now. And part two begins with a lot of people just focus on 1 year and just collect what they can for that 1 year. A very prominent collector and philatelic correspondent, John M. Hotchner, collects 1934. And he bought that Christmas card from me that was mailed to Cape Town, South Africa. But here's an example of a year that I looked at that might be reasonably collectible. 1927. 1927 is significant because it's the first year that Canada borrowed our Christmas seal and borrowed the design and issued their own double-barred Cross of Lorraine seals, Christmas seals. They had been issuing Red Cross seals before. And they're the French and English. Well, you can't have the seals printed with only one language. That can't be in Canada. So you have another one that's Bonne Santé, and that's Merry Christmas in French. Go ahead, Paul. What made the year interesting and why I focused on it is I managed to accumulate a lot of peripheral things about 1927. Up at the top is an imperfect proof pair, a block of 4. Then in the second row, what you're looking at is a progressive color proof set. And to answer Paul's question, this one only has 4 stages to it. And then underneath is really the most bizarre thing. What you're looking at is 9 blocks of printer's waste. Now, the first time I saw that was about 50 years ago. And a dealer in Cincinnati had it. He didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it was. I knew it was connected to 1927 because if you're familiar with the design, you can see that this is clearly a 1927 artifact of some kind. So he didn't know what it was, and I didn't know what it was. And when you have a situation like that and you're interested in buying and the dealer doesn't know what he has to sell, I can only say one thing: the price is never right. And in this instance, the price was not right. I paid too much for it. I bought one of these. I don't forget which one it is that came from that dealer. If you look at the next page, there's 4 more of them. I ended up with 13 of these. I'm not sure how any of these ever got to me. I mean, what does somebody do? Are they standing outside the print shop waiting for them to throw something away and then going through the trash and collecting everything they think could be collectible? I'm not sure where these came from, but I ended up with 13 of them. This is a 1927 Christmas seal advertising card. And I found that in an antique shop. So I have a small collection consisting of basically 3 pages. Go ahead, Paul.
That advertising card almost looks like a blotting pad that were common in those days.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a blotter. There's nothing on the other side of it. As a matter of fact, it's pasted to cardboard. You see the margin up at the top? Yeah. It's pasted to this cardboard. And I'm not going to touch it. I'm leaving it just the way it is. And this is the time where it becomes very hard to find seals that have been tied on cover because or card, because the Postal Service forbid you to put them there. I don't know how these got through, but you can find them throughout the period when they were forbidden. They still leak through. And I've found two. These are the only two I've ever found of 1927. Here's a very collectible year. This is an interesting year. This is 1929. There's a proof block or a strip of 4 at the top. It's a progressive color proof set, which only has 4 stages in it. Down here in the middle, the single stamp and the block, which is down on the bottom, that is an essay. That essay is a famous essay, aptly called The Yellow Jacket. Now, that was one of the designs that the people who were making the decision about which design to adopt, that was one of the designs which was being considered, and somehow or other it gets out. There are a number of instances where essays have leaked out. I'm not sure what the ethics is in taking with you some design and then selling it outside. I don't know how that works out, but in any event, this is a very famous essay called The Yellow Jacket. And then here on the next one, here are 2 1929 seals canceled. And look at the top one. The seal was put on the lower left corner, and look at what it's canceled with. It's canceled with an airmail advertising cancel. Airmail was still not in very common usage then in 1929. So they were suggesting that you would save time if you bought an airmail stamp and mailed it that way. So they were encouraging people to do that, and that's what that cancel is. And then here's one down at the bottom that's just somehow they let that leak through. Now, I have a small collection of these. As you can imagine, these are pretty hard to find. The postal regulations were forbidding you from putting Christmas seals on the mailing side of a card or a cover. And the reason was this. And this is the earliest one that I have, 1909. This was passed as postage. So here's the card where the seal was actually used for postage and passed by the Postal Service. Here's another one, 1933. Somehow or other, this one got passed as postage. Go ahead, Paul. This is really strange. Here is a 1946 Christmas seal, canceled, attempted use as postage. The address was no good, so they couldn't deliver it. They put postage due stamps on it. I don't know, it was held for a better address, held for postage, dated December 23rd, 1946, and the seal was canceled. So it was attempted to pass. I don't know where this came from. I found it at a dealer years ago. He had it. He saved it for me. I bought it from him. Where it came from, I don't know. The dead letter office somewhere. And here is a card, Christmas card in 1964, where a Christmas seal was used as postage and it was delivered. Go ahead, Paul. And it continues on. Here's 1979. This is a Christmas seal that was used as postage. looks like to pay a bill, and put the Christmas seal on, and it was passed. This is just absolutely unbelievable. A kid writes a letter to Santa Claus, addresses it to the North Pole, uses a 1982 Christmas seal to mail the letter, and it gets canceled. Now, where did it go? I don't know. It ended up with me, and I'm not exactly sure how that worked out, but it is a really bizarre cover. A kid writes to Santa Claus, addresses his letter to the North Pole, uses a Christmas seal, and it gets canceled by the Postal Service. Where it went, I have no idea. Here's another one. I think this was another bill that was paid in 1990. And somebody used a Christmas seal, was delivered. This is exactly what the post office didn't want to see. They're hard to find, but I've managed to find this many of them. And here is one from the Capper Foundation. This is a charity in Topeka, Kansas, that deals with people with disabilities. This got passed for postage. It's one of their seals that was passed for postage.
That looks more like a stamp than the Christmas seals.
It does, yeah, it does. It'd be easier to confuse that one than one of the seals. Now, here's another collecting interest that seal collectors have that makes cheap seals more valuable. Mailed on Christmas Day. Canceled on Christmas Day. Now, every one that I'm going to show you that is canceled on Christmas Day is undoubtedly a cover that was prepared to be collected. Now, it may have been mailed. This one may have been mailed back to himself. A.W. Dunning is a very prominent seal collector. And he may have taken this 1933 seal, gone to the post office, knew the clerk agreed to cancel it and send it back to himself. That could have been the way that card was made. There's another one. This one's unaddressed. So this is an example probably of putting the seal on the card, convincing the postal clerk it's okay to cancel this because you're going to hand it right back to me and I'm going to take it home and it's never going to be processed through the Postal Service. But this is an unaddressed, canceled on Christmas Day. Here's another one, canceled on Christmas Day, 1936. This one also is unaddressed. So I suspect that the same thing happened. They just canceled it for him, handed it back to him, took it home. Here's one that is actually mailed on Christmas Day. This is 1937, mailed on Christmas Day, addressed to a collector, Vernon Morley in Kansas. Here's a very nice collectible. It would have been a lot better if the cancel had been moved over so that it caught the seal. It didn't. But I've got something else to show you. It's mailed from Christmas, Florida, which makes it, and it's mailed on Christmas Day. So this is a very collectible thing. On the back, they put a strip of 6. It got canceled on the back. Strip did. It would have been nicer if they canceled the front, but they did get the back, so there is legitimate usage on the back. This is a great cover. I showed it before in connection with the fact that it had a slogan seal and it was canceled and mailed. It's mailed on Christmas Day in 1938. And it has a slogan seal. It has the seal itself. All of them are canceled.
Stanley, a question.
Yeah.
I'm assuming these post offices weren't open then, were they, on Christmas? These are
I-
like a favor. They left it and I'll stamp it and you can put it out Monday or something like that, or?
I don't know. I don't know. In those days, I don't know. I know the post office in Santa Claus, Indiana was open
Okay.
because they were
okay.
doing volumes of business
Yeah.
on Christmas Day, because that would be the official launch date of the campaign.
Mhm.
And so they were some of the campaigns, and some of them were canceled on Christmas Day and Santa Claus. So I'm pretty sure that one was open. I don't know about the rest. Who knows?
Yeah. Now I remember for November 11th, 2018, which would have been the 100th anniversary of the armistice of the Great War, going to the post office and begging, because that was on a Sunday. Doesn't anybody come in and check the pipes or the fluid? Who could just, do this for me? But I did not get it.
They're pretty rigid about it these days. They're pretty
Yeah.
rigid about when they open, when they close, and when they're not going to open.
Yeah, yeah. I get, but unless somebody was just, I have to come in and catch up on my work, I can do it for you, that type of, which I think they would, but yeah.
Who knows? Here is another A.W. Dunning card mailed on Christmas Day, again, Wilmington, North Carolina. And what I'm thinking is he mailed it to himself.
Mm-hmm.
It's addressed to him. It seems like he mailed it to himself. He might have even had it canceled at the post office where he had a post office box, and he just stick it in the post office box.
A bunch of them.
Now, here is another canceled on Christmas Day. This one's canceled in Hawaii on December 25th, 1944. The seals are tied by a censor tape. The cancel didn't make it to the seal, but the seal is tied by a censor tape. And it's at a time when most of the mail was probably opened and reviewed, especially if you were out in the Pacific the way they are. And it has a Remember Pearl Harbor cachet. So this is really a very collectible cover.
Plus that stamp was an image of an outdoor theater, she held up between the trees for the GIs.
Yeah.
I remember those days. Not in the Pacific, but yeah.
Here's another one, mailed on Christmas Day, December 25th. And what happened here is the person had a wreath stamp. So he tied it with his wreath stamp as well as having it canceled. Paul has a very nice Christmas cancel, and he sent me a card that had that very nice Christmas cancel on it. But here's an example where he puts a 41 seal and he puts a 44 seal. Everything's canceled on Christmas Day, and then you have these wreath cancels added to it. So that's a pretty nice cover too. And then here's a Navy ship cancel from the USS Iowa. And John Hotchner is going to use this sometime down the road, he told me. I shared this with him. He's interested in ship cancels and ship mail. And this is a really interesting one. This is the USS Iowa cancel, and it's on a block of 4 of Boys Town. Those are Boys Town seals. But I put it in this, even though it's Christmas related. It isn't a Christmas seal, but it is Christmas related. It is a Boys Town charity, but it was so nicely connected to this that I went ahead and I did that and put it in this. It's a December 25th cancellation on the ship. As with postage stamps, booklet panes, the second issue of the national seals was in 1908. 1907 were the first seals, 1908 were the second. They were issued in a number of different varieties. I mean, a number of different venues. And booklet panes were issued then in 1908. On and off, they've been issued. I don't have very many of them, but they are very collectible, far more collectible than the seals themselves. There's 39 and 31. And if you get tired of national seals and all of their variants and other things that I've shown you, there are other charities. And for example, two very prominent charities are the Lutheran Evangelical Sanitarium, Wheat Ridge, and the Grace Lutheran Sanitarium, San Antonio. And these are national charities. And they issue seals, and they are very collectible. Here is, this is the beginning of Lutheran Evangelical Sanitarium. The one on the upper left is 1910. It's very scarce. It's a very poor copy. It's the best one I could ever find for what I was willing to pay, but it's a really poor copy. The second one is 1911. It's a variant of 1910, and then they go on, and there are some interesting things associated with these. There are essays. I'll show you an error on the next page. This is where I stopped my collection. I went up to this point, and then I decided I don't want to accumulate it anymore. That's an error. If you look back on the previous page, Paul, you look back on the previous page and look at the top three. I don't know which one of those it is. It's one of those, and it's missing the frame. But that's an error. That last one that I showed you is an error. And there it is. Now, the next grouping is grouping from, well, oh, sorry, the covers. I have a lot of covers. I selected these two. Yeah, these two, which are number 2 and number 3 from Lutheran Sanitarium, Wheat Ridge. I found these two in Colorado. They're pretty nice covers. Very collectible. I have a lot of them. I'm only showing 2. Grace Lutheran Sanitarium is a very collectible item. This is all the early ones. They were issued in different formats too. You'll see, I think on the next one, you may see that they were issued in booklet panes and they're issued in sheets. So you're gonna get them in. I think that might have, what I'm thinking of is it might have referred to Wheat Ridge rather than this. If you go back, I'm sorry, Paul. Go back one more. I want to show you the difference.
You want to go to Wheat Ridge?
Yeah, go to Wheat Ridge.
Okay.
And what we're looking at, yeah, there it is. What you're seeing is a seal taken out of a booklet pane and a seal taken out of a sheet. A seal taken out of a booklet pane, and they're collected in both those venues. So you're going to have straight edges on the booklet pane, and you're going to have fully perforated on the sheets. I wanted to make that point. Go ahead, Paul. This is interesting. This is Grace Lutheran Sanitarium number 1. That's the card up there. And it was mailed from Canada back into the US. So the seal was used in Canada and mailed into the US. Here's just another one of a very attractive seal. Their designs are very attractive. The second card is, I just put it in there because the seal is very attractive. Now, if you get tired of collecting seals from a national charity, where seals are pretty abundant, there is something which is even more challenging. There are local charities, and I'm going to show you some local charities, and then it gets very challenging because the local charities, the circulation is restricted to the area where they were released, and unless you happen to be on their mailing list or something, you don't get this. But here are some seals from New Orleans, and this one is a complete collection. This is complete. They started issuing them in 1924 and they stopped in 1940. That's all the seals they released. I have some printer's waste, gutter pairs, other things that I didn't put in this. All I did was show you exactly what the set itself looks like. That's what they look like. And what's really challenging is to try to find these used on a cover because they were used locally. But I have managed to find 2 of them. There they are, 1926 and 1939. Those are the only 2 I have ever found for that charity. They're hard to find because they were used locally, and so you're gonna have a hard time if you don't live in the area finding them. Okay. Here is a charity, Cambridge. It's a Cambridge overprint, so it's a Christmas seal which is being used locally in Cambridge, Massachusetts. What they did is in 1930, 31, and 32, they received permission from the National Tuberculosis Association to overprint them for use in that locality. They only have 3 stamps. This is a complete collection, the top 3. The one underneath it is a double print. It's a very scarce seal that was double printed in 1930. It's an error. What I read and what I was told is only one of those sheets with the double print ever escaped. And that's one of the 100 that escaped. The others are blocked. Here is a charity that's interesting. The top 2 seals are very scarce. They're from 1912 and 1913. So the Chattanooga Tuberculosis Sanitarium, they issued these seals to raise money in 1912 and 1913. Then for some reason, they stopped. And they didn't issue anymore until 1944. And then they revived their interest in this, and they revived their interest with another name, Pine Breeze. And so initially they had a small format, then they went to a large format in 1946. And then on the next page, they went to sort of a medium format after the large format. Each one of them is dated. And then go to the last page of those. They discontinued them. That's the last one that was issued. I didn't make this collection. I bought it from somebody else. It's a very interesting collection. And as a local, I've never found any of these used on a car to recover. But I will show you one thing I found on the next. This is the only thing that I ever found connected to that. And it's what they did is they sent the seals out. They were unsolicited. And what they were doing here is sending this card out with the seal to remind them of what it was. We haven't gotten your money yet, so we'd like to have you give us a contribution. That's as close as I ever got to seeing one of these. But on the next slide is a cover that made front page news in the Seal News. Somebody bought this in eBay, and it's got 4 1945 seals. I can't read it, but they're the early ones after they resumed issuing the seals in the 40s. I guess 1945. One of them is canceled. That's the only one I've ever seen of these in use. And it's front page news on the Seal News. That's the Christmas Seal and Charity Stamp Society's newsletter. Okay, Paul. Chicago Tuberculosis Institute issued 3 seals. These 3 seals were variants of the national design. And what they did is they put a union label. See the union label underneath it? They issued them in 1912, 1913, and 1914. This is 1913 and 1914. I have never seen a copy of 1912 that I wanted to pay as much as the person selling it wanted to get for it. So I don't have a 1912, but I do have some collateral. This comes from the Chicago Tuberculosis Institute, and here's a card that was sent out suggesting that people not engage in this behavior.
Is there a date on that card, Stan? Or
no, I think it was not mailed. I think we found this in a card in an antique shop, and I don't think it had been mailed. I'll look at the other side of it and get back to you.
So it might have been, sometime, 12, 13, or 14 too, when that was active.
That'd be nicer if it was.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It looks about that era, but yeah, I think it's a great card.
It's a great card.
Reminds me of some of the ones I've seen from the fountains over in Europe, where he actually isn't spitting, but there's still a stream coming out.
Oh, nice. And these later became the Chicago Heart Association. Here is the 1948 seal. And then I've managed to find 3 more that are tied to cover. Actually, there are 2 of them there, one there and one there, and they're tied, legitimately used. And then this is really challenging. This is the Federation of Women's Clubs, and they issued seals. And what you see are seals that were issued with each association in the States where the Federation of Women's Clubs was set up. Now, there are 18 of these, of which you see 9. That's a pretty large collection. I doubt I'll find any more of them. especially if you were to include Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania issued, their Federation of Women's Clubs issued a seal, and I believe only one copy of it is known to exist. So I'm not ever going to find that. But in any event, I did manage to find 9 of them. And then if you really get tired of Christmas seals, here's a collecting interest which seems to have caught on with some people: labels. Legitimately used, postally used labels. And all these are postally used Christmas labels. They're not seals. They're just labels that have been canceled as though it was a seal. And that's a very, that's becoming a collectible area apart from Christmas seals. And then we have a lead into the next presentation. Paul and I are working on a foreign seal presentation. Here are 2 foreign seals. Muskogee Free Hospital for Consumptives in Canada issued seals. These are 2 very early Muskogee Free Hospital seals. They're very collectible, and these will also be part of the presentation we make on foreign seals. Okay, Paul.
You're muted, Paul.
Sorry about that. Yeah, open up for questions. I'll leave these up in case you want to refer to any of the slides. Does anybody have any questions for Stan?
No, I don't have a question. I have a possible answer for you.
Okay.
The December 25th postmarks may have been before 1970 or 71, I believe it is, that the Postal Union was formed. Prior to that, there was not a union.
Huh. That's
The Postal Union.
Well, yeah, they could, to get the Christmas mail out, they would ask their employees to work Christmas Day
Oh,
to get that mail out. When they
Oh.
formed the union, they couldn't do it anymore. It was declared a holiday.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
That was a theory I had too, because in those old city directories I have, and it talks about the post office hours, they were open on Sunday. Didn't say anything about Christmas or New Year's, but I would assume that if they were open on Sunday back in the day, they were probably open on holidays too. And I thought it was probably because of a union issue. Something to look into.
And part
And
two,
I think you find with like in the Navy, the postal clerks, you can get just about anything done that way. The Navy postal was as efficient as the Navy supply system, kind of like radar when you send a piece of a Jeep home once a week from Korea. We had somebody another comment? Or
yeah,
On
the other part of that is there are some national parks who have postal stations that work on Christmas Day. The closest one I know of to this area in Pennsylvania is in New Jersey, Batchtub. I do have correspondence from them on holidays.
okay.
well, if I'd like to know where that is, because I'd like to go there on Christmas Day and see whether or not they'll cancel something for me.
Yeah.
What you'd have to get there before Christmas Day, give it to the lady, because the park is closed. But the person in the post office will postmark it. but she will not be there. Just so you understand that, you have to do it in advance.
Okay, good to know.
Just this is Mike. Back in England, my father was lived in a very small village, and the postmaster was actually a collector himself and joined the local stamp society. So he would cancel covers on special days and Sundays and Christmas Day for members.
Yeah.
Yes, there and I had cover canceled in Odessa, Delaware, and they have a special cancellation day too. And they only have it's only once a year, and it's only on Saturday from 8 to noon. So I went over on Saturday, and I got such a cancellation.
Stan, that's a great collection. Very, very, very good. Enjoyed it immensely. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
Yes, very much so. Other questions? Stanley's working on one and has been working on it for quite a while for next year for some of the foreign ones. And it makes this collecting look easy.
Yeah, especially if you don't speak the language of some of these seals, it makes it really difficult.
It takes all these variations from printers and locals and nationals to you multiply that by a whole bunch of other countries, and you have a lifetime of collecting industry interest. And as Stan said, the prices are right, at least for the U.S. ones.
I have a question for Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Stanley, I've been collecting title and Christmas seals. Oh, it must be for 30 years. When I go through postcards at postcard shows, and I have them all except for 31 through 36, 40 and 41. Why are they so scarce?
Well, the 31 through 36, they're hard to find because of the postal regulations. They didn't want you to put the seal on the mailing side of the card or the cover. So late 20s to the early 30s, those are the ones that are really hard to find. And some people have said they're much harder to find than Red Cross seals, which seem to be pretty common. The early ones in the teens, they're relatively common, but when you get to the late 20s and early 30s, the postal regulations, they got very strict about that. They did not like what I showed you at all. They did not like to see something passed for postage because they know somebody made a mistake when they did it. And I think that when they toughened that up, I think that's what made it very difficult for the years you're talking about.
I think it's like with the parcel stamps, I don't think it's that the clerks didn't have a clue what was going on, but when you're trying to do things just so fast as they were,
Right.
there's always the milestones and the benchmarks even back then. Almost anything got canceled that looked like a stamp in a hurry.
Right.
And they lost money.
And I bring things over with seals on them to a clerk I know. And she looks at this, and the first time she saw what I was bringing over, she didn't know that it wasn't a stamp.
Yeah.
She said, there's no denomination on this. Oh, well, it's not a stamp. And there are a lot of people who don't know what they are. And that's one of the problems that the post office has with it.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of, because of people like us, there's a lot of people like them in the post office who are long suffering. Yeah. That isn't a stamp. No, but that is, and they add up to 58 cents. Are you sure?
Yeah. She's gotten used to me now.
Yeah. That's what it is.
She knows what I'm doing.
Relationship.
Yeah, we have talked quite a bit, and she told me, do you think you can get me Christmas seals from my birthday Oh, I said, I'm sure that I can. Tell
How
me
many
your
sheets would you like, right?
1957, I think is what she told me it was. And I brought in a cover with a block of 4 of them. I told her to cancel it and take it home. Just that way, put a stamp on it. I'll pay for the stamp, cancel it, don't address it, and just take it home and save it.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. Goes a long way.
There's one thing I'd like to add. I was just looking through some post office materials, and during the wars, because of the lack of manpower, they were using high school kids and that they could get to handle the mail in the post office to make sure the load of mail would make it out in time to get the troops and everything else. So because of that, I'm sure they didn't know all the rules and regulations or anything. It was just like free help.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a good point, Jim.
I'll
Yeah,
send
we
you a-
have stories of the Boy Scouts doing it. I have a bunch of Christmas, I don't know, they're local from the Boy Scouts in Great Britain. I have several years of those when they were allowed by law to deliver letters in their town. They'd pay 2 pennies and the Boy Scouts would keep a penny or something like that. Other questions, comments? Do we have many seal collectors there? Or got a few? Yeah.
Jim's there.
Very, very interesting. It's a whole collecting area in itself. Okay, well, thank you very much, Stan. I hope we got a few things. We hope you can stay with us for a little while and we'll give you the silent cheer.
Thank you.
Very, very appreciative group up in Lancaster. And maybe when Bob comes up sometime, you can come up with him.
I would go up with him.
meet
Yeah.
us. Yeah, we are. I wanted to mention too, and I'll be getting out an email, but on June, I think it's Wednesday, June 8th, Larry Rosenblum from California will be in town. Well, he'll be in the Philly area, and we're going to meet him kind of in between. And we're hoping to get a lot of our club members, Allentown, Bethlehem, maybe Delaware, Lancaster, Lebanon, and for lunch. But I'll get that information out. But it's June 8th, that Wednesday, and we're looking forward to that. And it's going to be outdoor dining, so my wife will let me go.